Welcome to the Fragrance Files.
Welcome to the Fragrance Files.
I was always interested in fragrance. I had a lot of friends and family in the business, and as you guys know, it's a small industry. It's there's once you know a few people, you know a lot of people. And so I got to meet some of these perfumers as a kid. I would get these like samples from the lab, and so that was kind of got me into it early on, and I got exposure to that side of things, the lab side of things, the perfumer side of things, where they're creating these fragrances in these studios. And that was always super interesting to me. And that was, I thought, very different from, I think, the retail side of fragrance, the way that most people interact with fragrance, and the way that I interacted with fragrance, being also a consumer.
JJ, thank you so much for joining us today. So, for those who don't know, JJ is the founder of Olfactory NYC. For those who may not have heard about it, can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so at Olfactory NYC, our whole idea is to make high quality luxury fragrance in an accessible, fun, and interactive way. And the way that we do that is through this customization process that we're known for, where we start with one of our core fragrances and then you build upon that with various accords. So you get a fragrance that's tailored to you.
Looking at kind of the foundations of Olfactory NYC, what felt broken to you about the fragrance industry and made you decide to actually start the company?
Yeah, so fragrance, as you guys know, I mean, for many years, fragrance was dominated by these designer brands. In the last, in the sort of 2000s, you got a lot of these niche brands coming along, which were really fragrance focused for once, because designer brands, fragrance was that kind of like ancillary product to a bigger fashion business, Dior, Chanel, that kind of thing. And then you get in the 2000s, you get these brands that are fragrance first, Le Labo, Byredo, Diptyque, these things where it's really about the fragrance, which was awesome. The only thing was for me that I felt was a lot of those brands were catering to one kind of customer.
Mhm.
They were all quite expensive. You had to be, you also had to be willing to spend quite a bit of money. And so they weren't really a good sort of like gateway drug to fragrance as an art that I thought, was missing out there. So what we set out to do at Olfactory was to create something that was really fun, accessible, that wasn't intimidating, that was able to sort of invite a different kind of customer, a new generation of fragrance. I wouldn't say lovers, fragrance, sort of people who are sort of interested in fragrance, and
Mhm.
sort of bring them into the world of fragrance and hopefully introduce them to the art of fragrance. And then, eventually they'll go on and keep shopping with us or go to other places, go to style places where they can sort of really dive into fragrance, and the sort of deeper ends of fragrance. So that was kind of the idea of the olfactory, is like, there's not enough ways to experience this product and this art form in a way that felt like the stakes were low.
I think it's a really great concept, and I think there's lots of fragrance enthusiasts out there that we all come to some point where we're like, what if I made my own fragrance? And it's an
Right.
incredibly like a high bar of entry into making your own fragrance. So I love the idea that people can get the experience of, smelling ingredients, smelling accords, and trying to put things together to see how they blend. I think it's a great like, hey, it's a great introduction into this world for people. Do you do you think that you set out to disrupt or to fix your own experience in fragrance?
It's sort of an interesting one. I don't. I always like fragrance, and when I go into a Frederick Malle, or I mean, maybe I shouldn't be saying specific brands, or if I go into like any sort of high end fragrance brand, I don't feel like necessarily intimidated because I know some of this
Mhm.
stuff. I
Mhm.
don't feel like the ingredients and the sort of the kind of theater of it all is super intimidating. But I know people who do, and I felt that
Mhm.
people I would be with would find that like quite hard to access. So for us perspective, like it's not just accessible from a price perspective. We're definitely cheaper than most fragrances from a price perspective, but we're also just like the accessibility is also that access to the world of perfumery, which I think is just harder
Mhm.
to get into. So when you say disrupt or fix, I think that like it was just trying to offer a different angle. Like, how can I get more people interested in this thing that I'm interested in a way that will be more accessible for them?
Yeah. I think that's really important because I know for myself when I kind of left the world of like my designer and my easily accessible fragrances and started getting into the niche and the indie and the obscure, it was very intimidating to go into certain stores. Like I remember my first time going into Bergdorf Goodman to smell fragrances and feeling completely out of place and not knowing the lingo and feeling like I was going to be pushed into something. And I look back on that now and I'm like, that's you're being silly, but it's intimidating, especially if these are big ticket items for some in some cases, and it's not, especially in our economy at the moment, these are big decisions for people. It may seem small to some, but it's a lot. So I think having that accessibility and having that experience is so important for people who are learning and looking to become part of this community too.
Yeah, and I would say too that because fragrance is not a visual product,
Mhm.
at least the actual product isn't. It's something that you have to experience. People don't. I feel like and having interacted with a lot of customers over the years, people don't feel, I think, the confidence of knowing what it is that they love without the input of other people, or without the kind of, and then if you're doing it, if you're going into a bug booth or something like that, like you've got a sales associate, so like do they really have your best interests? You're kind of like you're kind of going into this world and you're trying to make a decision. It's not like feeling cashmere and saying that's really
Mhm.
soft. You're like smelling some vetiver or something. You're like, what even is vetiver? I don't even like, and you're trying to like be, and so it's a lot to take in, I think. And
Mhm.
so that was always the sort of impetus behind us is how do we get that customer? Because there is that customer in other countries, fragrance is a little bit more of a broader, um, broadly used product. And we felt like there was that, and it was just total theory, right? But like, and we did some customer analysis, but those are theories. Like, there is people who are interested in this, but it feels like too much work to kind of
Mhm.
really get over that hump and really get into it.
Yeah, I think we've talked quite a bit with some of our other guests about, especially in the luxury space, whether it's a designer fragrance or like a luxury niche house, there is kind of this exclusionary border that they keep, and that's part of their mystique. It's part of their brand. Um, but in a world where this is an art form, it's your fifth sense. You want to have something where people can at least get their foot in the door and not feel so intimidated.
Yeah, I mean, and as you say, like it's great for some and it works well. And I think of it like there's a lot of incredible art in the Louvre. But that doesn't mean there's not space for, a MoMA or something that's like trying to just bring a different kind of person who's into something, who's trying to access in a different way and is interested in a different way of presenting the product. Um, I just think that it's like it's just it's for different people. That want to experience it.
Yeah. I think this is totally going off on a tangent and not off script, but I think you mentioned something in there too about, going into a store and kind of almost like chasing the hype of like what you've heard of, what you've seen before, what you've seen people talking about versus an experience of going to Olfactory NYC where you have to learn how to trust your own nose and build, your taste. I think it's a really important part of anybody's fragrance journey to start learning what they like. And I think this offers a really great opportunity for people to do that as well.
Yeah, I mean, well, I will say this though, just as kind of like counterpoint. 95 to 95+% of our customers are coming in groups.
I
So
love that.
very rarely people
Mm.
are coming in and doing it on their own.
Hmm.
And that might just be, again, part of the reason, like fragrance, right? You want to have, it's actually much more of an experiential product, a group experiential product than I ever thought it was. But for us, it really is. People are developing that taste together. They're smelling things on each other. If your best friend likes the way it smells on you or your partner, that can really impact what you like. Because ultimately, you're wearing fragrance partly for the way it smells on you, but you also want when people smell you, other people who are smelling you to like it too. It's not like it's and that's where it's also different from like clothes, because or skincare, saying like what I buy needs to feel good on me, and how it affects others is less important, I think, than fragrance is. So I don't know if that analogy is quite right with clothes, because obviously there's you want other people to like the way you look, but there are other personal products which really only matter to you. Fragrance, I think, we all say, oh well, if I like it, I like it. Like, who cares what other people think? But fragrance, you don't want people to walk past you and not. You want people to like the way you smell. You want it either for
Yeah.
attraction reasons or for whatever else. You want other people to like it. And so that's what people are doing. People are coming to olfactory and see they're coming in groups, they're coming in pairs, date nights, that kind of thing, where you're getting something for yourself, but you're also very much involved in the creation for the person you're with as well.
A few previous interviews that I was reading up on, you've spoken about how removing packaging, branding, markups, things like that, really allowed you to kind of hit that accessible price point. To educate the viewers a little bit more, can you explain kind of the model of Olfactory?
Yeah, I mean, as you guys probably know, I'm sure. I mean, fragrance is pretty the sort of product level margins are pretty high, in the sense that, and also just like what you're paying for, what goes into the actual juice itself is a very small part of what you're actually buying. And it's worth kind of thinking. I mean, it was almost kind of ridiculous, right? Like, no, I can't think of any other product where the actual part you're actually using is so small in terms of the cost compared to just the packaging of itself. And I always just found that crazy. And it's not really in vogue now. Like, nowadays, packaging is just like, everyone talks about packaging. It's so important. People want to have beautiful products, and I get it. For us, though, the focus was always on the juice. How can we have the best fragrance and stuff you actually wear? Packaging was most of it. Half of it is going to end up in the trash. We wanted to focus on that. And then, what can we do? What trade-offs can we make? We don't want to have bad packaging. We want to have good packaging, but that's where the trade-offs can happen. So how can we save on that? Also, brands pay for bottling services. Well, if you're bottling them on site when you're making them, it's kind of wrapped in. So there are all these little things where you can kind of strip out some of those costs. We also use a lot of the same bottle, at least across all, you can make all different fragrances, but it's the same bottle. So we look for ways in which we can streamline that side of things, because that's where brands get stuck, is high MOQs. You've got these, you want to do all these different SKUs but like, you can't, because you've got different, whatever different stage you've got to be paying for things. So by kind of somewhat vertically integrating, at least within these stores, you're able to get rid of some of that. And that, I think, without getting too into it, I hope that, like, in terms of the model, that helps. Also, the thing is, with us, obviously, when you come in, you're paying for an experience as well. So it's also the person's time you're paying for to help you, which, isn't that different, I guess, for if you spend a lot of time in a fragrance store. They have sales associates too, but with us, it's really kind of a one-on-one. It's a a personal experience. So that's definitely a high cost for us.
So you've worked with several quite prolific perfumers. Where do we credit them versus where we credit the customer?
Yeah, I mean, these are still very much fragrances designed by the perfumer, and then they're tailored by you. So the same way, like, if you go to a tailor, you get a suit tailored or something like that. Like, well, that'd be a suit, dress, whatever. If you're going to a tailor, it's still Dolce & Gabbana making the suit, but then you get it tailored and made to you, and you've now got something that really fits you, even though the fabric and whatever was made by, a world-class designer. And that's probably going to be a better suit than something that if you were to make the fabric, right? Like, by your, so I think that's where we are. Like, we feel like our customization process, yes, it's not fully custom, but, like, as in, you're not building from scratch, but we could do that. But we think that you wouldn't end up with such a great fragrance at the end of it if you did do that. While the experience may or may be more to your preference, there are places you can make full custom fragrances. You can work with someone to do that. Often it's quite expensive, but you can do that. But it's just not what we're going for. And the model, to your previous question, like it kind of depends on you loving the fragrance and wanting to get it again. We can't really if everyone's just coming in and buying once, that'll be tough for us because we are going for this accessible price point and trying to do really high quality at a low price point. We do want people to love the fragrance. We want them to really get attached to it and keep coming back for it. And I think if you focus too much on just the building of it and you're building it, it's kind of like you make the scent, but then, are you really going to want to get it again and you're going to use it all? So I could be completely wrong, by the way, but that was kind of the way that we approached it.
I think what a great way to make a signature scent or find a signature scent to tailor something for yourself. I think we don't often think of signature scents as we're both collectors and are constantly trying new things. But I think a great majority of people who wear fragrance probably are signature fragrance folks. So I think, for anybody who's looking to smell different, but maybe not buy 300 bottles of perfume, customizing your own fragrance gives you that outlet.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, but we also people who customize multiple, it's for different times of the year. I think that it's, or whatever. I mean, you can obviously, as someone who has that many fragrances, I'm sure you wear them for different time. I think that it's just part of, figuring, as I say, it's kind of a journey, right? People, they smell one thing, they like it for a little bit, then they think, okay, how can I change this? How can I build on this? How can I get something that's kind of along the same lines? Or I want to keep that ingredient but change something else. So I think that, fragrance is always a journey. You're always learning new things about the things you like. You're discovering new ingredients and new perfumes you like. And so, I think that we just like to be a part of that.
Yeah, I liked the analogy of like the tailor and the suit because I was reading through actually just today some of the different it's like 17 base fragrances in your core lineup, and they're made by a variety of really prolific perfumers, including like Frank Vogel, who did the very extremely well-known Santal 33. So there is this basis where like people who maybe are somewhat familiar with fragrance know that they're getting something that is still very good quality. There are a lot of these kind of workshops that exist, and some of them feel a bit loose in like what is this? Where are these accords from? Did you make these in your kitchen? And this is like a very that guided customization of something that has been tested and is balanced and is ready to be blended.
Yeah, and also I just say and spotlighting the perfumer. I mean, these guys are amazing artists who train for years and years. You might be a talented amateur perfumer, not you guys, but the customer might be
whomever.
But you're realistically not gonna stand up there. And we want to respect that. We want to respect the art that goes into the time and the training that goes into this. And the beautiful creations that they can come up with. And you mentioned one there. And all of our perfumers have created awesome fragrances for loads of designer brands, niche brands, and they are really amazing artists. And so definitely a huge part of our brand is spotlighting those. We would never want to take away from that. I think for us, it's when a brand goes to a perfumer and they want to make a fragrance, the perfumer comes up with a bunch of different iterations. They go back and forth. The brand tries them, as you know, they try all these different versions anyway. And then what ends up happening is someone in the brand, maybe someone who's an evaluator or a marketer or whatever, they pick the favorite one, and that's the one that ends up on the shelf, and that's the one that's for everyone. But all those other ones that ended up on the cutting room floor, those are still great fragrances. And those ones, one of those might have been better for you. And so what we're doing really in a way is kind of just rewinding that process. The perfume is still coming up with all these different stuff. We're still trying all these different things, but then we're leaving the last step up to the customer and our team on site to sort of find the perfect scent for you specifically.
Yeah, and can you talk to us a little bit about how the perfumers approached creating these different elements? Because like you said, it's a little different than creating a full composition.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that was like that when we when we talk to perfumers, we have back and forth and dialogue. That's always in the understanding is right. How do we what we really like this scent, but how does it interact with other accords? How can you build on it? How can you play with it? And if you can't, then how can we like take elements of it so that it can be so that we can sort of start with a different kind of base or that can be built. I will say, our scents, they can be on their own, they're fine. So that's just like, as I say, like that's one version, the core scent on its own, and the accords are the things you can add to it, all the different ways. Those are those things that end up on the cutting room floor, but they're not necessarily the scent itself. The core scent on its own might be the perfect one for you. So it's sort of a dual mandate for the perfumer. Like you got to make a really great fragrance, but also think of the different ways in which it can be, other things can be added to it to make it perfect for someone else. So it's definitely not a back and forth in that sense. And we also want to have a lineup at any given time that generally covers the spectrum of fragrances. So you mentioned 17 cores, but at any given time, we only have like 9 to 12. And we wanted to make sure that it covers the general spectrum of fragrance, so anyone who comes in can kind of like find something along the lines of what they're looking for. So yeah, there's push and pull. I mean, it's a lot of, but again, focusing on the juice, that's what it's all about. Like, so all the time we spend on that, we're not spending on, some beautiful heavy weighted brass cap or something like that. Right. So that's for us, we've had the same, we have a nice cap, but it's the same one we've always had. So that's kind of where we can sort of save on things is sort of building on really drilling down into the fragrance.
I love the juice first mentality, and it sounds like it's a really maybe a fun challenge for your perfumers as well. I do want to say I like the way you showcase in the stores, because I know you have images of the perfumers with the bases as well in the stores. Is that correct? I love seeing that because I love seeing perfumers, get their credit where their credit is due. So kudos for that.
To be honest, it was one of the things I thought was so weird at the beginning of this brand. Like it was so weird to me that you had all these, what other product is there where, what other art is there that like, you don't know who the maker is, who the artist is behind it. I mean, painters, musicians, like there's always the credit there. And with fragrance, it's just a strange industry where they're behind this sort of corporate wall. They don't really get the exposure. Brands do. Some do a good job of like putting it out there. But I was always so surprised. And so we felt like, why wouldn't we sort of sing your shout this from the rooftops? The favorite cut, like I once had this customer who came in and said like, I think it was like Ilias. I mean, I love everything he's created. And like, they knew like his lineup. I was like, that never happens. Like you never know what, you mentioned Frank Vogel, but like people won't know all the scents that he's created, like generally. But I think that it's a conversation starter, and it hopefully people will start to sort of look these people up and say, oh, I really love all the things this person's made.
We had a conversation with Michael Nordstrand, who's a perfumer and works for several brands and things like that. And he had a really great analogy where he was like, you don't have people walk into a bookstore and reference, we want Lord of the Rings by the publisher and never mention Tolkien in the conversation. So why aren't we talking about the authors of that are underneath here?
Yeah.
And it's such a good vehicle to discovery. That was actually the name of the episode with Michael, where, yeah, if someone comes in and they're exploring and they're like, Hunter, it really works for me. I love the way this sits and it's by Ilias. They can go and explore some of their other works, and they might just love the way they do perfume.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes there are themes. Like I'm not that good at this, but like there are times when you smell something and you're like, was that made by Ilya? Was that made by Frank? Like I feel like there's something there, and like, I don't know if that's the case, to be honest with you. But you sometimes they do have certain techniques. We have a scent Cam that's made by Frank, and like you can kind of get like a bit of that sort of Santal vibe at the bottom. And there's also like he also made the Glossier U scent, and sometimes like when I smell it, I get a little bit of that as well. And so they're just elements. They have some sort of like Easter eggs sometimes.
Do you think your customers that are coming in, do you think they're people who are looking to create or people that are looking to connect?
I think it's a cop out, but I'd say both. I mean, people who are looking to, I think that people are looking to connect with each other in a different way. As I say, we get so many people who come in on a date night. We get a lot of people who come in where it's clearly one person who booked the appointment and wants to like do this. And then there's the other person, usually a couple, there's the other partner who's kind of like, like, I don't know, is really this for me? And then it's them, it's that second person who is so into it by the end of it, who like won't leave, who's like obsessed with it, and is like keeps asking questions and is trying to smell new things. And the person who booked the appointment is okay, like I think we're ready to go now. Like, and so it's so it builds this connection between people, fragrance generally, and I'm sure you see it like still all the time. Like, people come in, they smell things, and like they talk to each other, and it just creates these conversations, which is just fascinating, and I think is what makes working at our stores. From what I hear as well, like from the staff, they just love it. Like they love engaging, they love talking about fragrance in different ways, and people say, "Oh, that smells like cotton candy and charcoal." Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? And that kind of effect that people, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, like I get that now." Like, and so this is kind of like, it kind of creates these amazing moments of connection through the creative process, that I think is just, it's awesome for me to watch. It's a really great thing to be a part of and to experience.
Yeah, I really love that experiential part of it. I think is so important because you mentioned this earlier. People want some kind of validation of their fragrance when they're in that like vulnerable spot of, did I do this right? Do I want to purchase this? Do I want to wear this? And I've been to a few like fragrance releases where there's 15 strangers, and by the end of the night, we're all shoving our wrists up to each other's faces saying, "Oh, isn't this one so good? How do you think this one is on me?"
Yeah, and then just because of the way, as you know, it smells different on different people. So we get this. People are like, it smells great, and then they're with their mom, and they put it on their mom, and they're like, "Oh, it smells terrible. Like, why does it?" And so it's kind of like, it's that sort of, it's those moments of sort of exclamation, delight, but also surprise, and it's what creates that kind of like that memory. And then as your fragrance is so associative, you smell that fragrance in the future, and it reminds you of those moments, that time spent together, those moments of connection, that experience, that part of your trip, that was special. And so I think that's what we love being a part of. And that's what I love whenever I go to this, whenever I go to any fragrance store, I will smell that fragrance again. It'll take me back to that time. And I think that's I think that's really valuable.
Do you feel like at the end of the day, you mentioned like the excitement of the people that just attended, not necessarily the person who booked it. Do you think that people are really coming there for the scent, whether it be the fragrance or the body wash or the lotion? You have multiple products lines, or is it the experience they have of this tailoring and feeling like this is mine?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they come for the experience, right? They're there for the experience. I think, to me, and what was kind of by design, is that they leave with a product that is great. And so, but that's sort of a surprise. Like, I think a lot of people, and I don't know this, but I assume a lot of people come, they make a set and they think, that was fun, and like, I have this thing to remember it by, but they don't necessarily like think it's going to be their everyday scent. But then it surprises them. And we see this in like, reviews all the time. It's like, oh, I just thought that this was going to be a fun day out, and now I have this scent that I'm going to wear for the rest of my life. Hopefully it's the rest of that. But they say that anyway. So like that's that's kind of like, I think the cool thing about it is that, and that's because fragrance, like so many of our customers, I think what makes us different from a lot of brands is in fragrance is that so many of our customers are not fragrance lovers to start. We could do, frankly, a better job of getting more fragrance lovers. I mean, I'm a fragrance lover, so I would love to have more people who come in as like super fragrance obsessives. I think that fragrance obsessives see us and think, it's a cheaper product, probably not for me. Like, I'm going to stick to, what I know, which is like, really expensive fragrances. And like, I think we can be that for them too, but when we're not right now, because I think that it's because of the way the brand is positioned. And I think we've got to do a better job of appealing to that group. Sorry, I don't even think that answered your question at all, but it was
I
a
thought it was
question.
a great answer, though.
No, I think it's a really great answer. We'd love to help you brainstorm some ideas on how you can get some of us major scent nerds in there.
Yeah, it's always been a struggle. I think, look, the price is one thing, right? You want to make something accessible. But then if you do that in fragrance, like there's that kind of like sort of opposite effect of that, where if you, and I forget the name of it in economics, but there's something where like, if you price something higher, then obviously people are going to think that it's better quality just generally. And so, we struggle with that. It's I think it's different in fragrance than other products where you can have affordable luxury, where the quality is very provable. If you buy a $30 cashmere sweater, I keep saying cashmere, but if you buy a $30 cashmere, you're like, okay, this is good value. Whereas fragrance, if it's good value, you think, is it good value, or are they just using cheap stuff? Like, is
Right.
this? And so that's a challenge for us as a brand to sort of bridge that and convince people that this is great stuff. And the perfumers are a big part of that, but yeah, I think it's a challenge for any sort of brand that in our kind of price point that's trying to like be like really great value.
Yeah. There's definitely a tension and a sort of elitism, I think, in the fragrance space where, people have this preconceived notion that just because something is more expensive means that it's automatically a higher quality, not taking into the account all of the things that you said about packaging and how much of that cost actually goes to packaging and how much goes to marketing versus how much is actually invested in the juice itself. And I'm a very juice first person. I can look past I have some bottles in my collection that I know Josh would never even pick up because they're so horrendously ugly, but they smell incredible, and that's what means the most to me at the end of the day. And I think there's a shift happening in the fragrance space because I think people are starting to realize that, but there's still a divide amongst people who like different kinds of scents. You have your people who are obsessed with affordable, people who are obsessed with indie, people who are obsessed with niche, and then your group that doesn't care as long as it smells good. I want to smell it.
Yeah, and it's also just like total interpretive too. I mean, you can have, I've bought stuff that's like cheap, which that may or may not be great, like ingredients wise, but like smells great on me. I don't know if it's for so yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough one. That sort of provability of the quality. So yeah, I mean, the experience is for us was always that kind of like, how do we get people into that top of that funnel? How do we get people through the door? And then hopefully the product will speak for itself after the fact.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, coming from we, and I would venture to say almost all of our audience are all fragrance obsessed freaks. Shocking to no one. But there is that element of, I think, both the community piece but also that trying your hand at it. As Mishi said earlier, how many of us the audience knows I'm on a long-standing path to find my perfect coffee perfume. How many of us have that elusive scent that we want and can't quite grasp? Yes, Olfactory NYC is kind of positioning itself as the doorway to get people into the art form, but also for those of us that have multiple bottles in our collection, we get to go and tailor something and experience accords and pieces, and that creative piece is still missing for a lot of us in the collecting space.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just as interesting and fun there.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. It's like, and look, we've had a lot of people who really know fragrance who love coming in. It's kind of like, it's daunting for, I think, some of the people who work there, because they're like, okay, now I feel like you're on the same level, and I don't know how do we sort of, and that's, but it's great because then you can kind of have a really kind of fun conversation back and forth, and I mean, you can find all sorts of cool stuff with us. I mean, we do a little bit of downside of being a brand that has a lot of sort of newbies coming in is that our most popular accords, the most popular sort of blends and directions people go are kind of in those kind of more classic directions. So we have all this side of the library that people don't really touch. It's kind of like in like Beauty and the Beast, like that library that's like behind all the cobwebs and stuff. That's like, we have all these cool fragrances that people don't really get into because it's a little too niche. And that's when the fragrance lovers, those are the stuff that gets, that gets brought out, that they sort of end up discovering. So there's plenty of room for that in what we do. Yeah, I mean, we love it. Yeah, we love kind of like getting into sort of more sort of niche notes, and definitely could help you find a coffee fragrance. We could but as you know, coffee's not a popular it's not a super
Yeah.
popular, it's getting more, by the way. It's getting more, I think, in fact, in terms of what we see, but it's not a super popular note for fragrance. And so, yeah, I mean, like you're sort of you're more limited. Whereas like gourmands, it's just so many gourmands there. Everyone's and we've got great gourmands, but it's like everyone's sort of going in that direction.
Yeah. When I come in, I want to see your weirdest accords.
Yeah, we got some good ones. Yeah.
I want to smell the ones that nobody ever wants to put in their fragrance.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's there's some fun ones, but look, at the end of the day, as I say, we want to make sure that you're guided. The way a guided
Yeah.
process works is we want to make sure you pick something that you're going to like. And so often the staff will like try and push you in a certain direction just because they want you to like it. They're gonna, and so they don't want you to pick something that's completely off the wall. But you can always, like, if you directly request it, they're going to give it to you.
Yeah. I also think with, you have 10 locations now, is that correct?
Yeah.
I also think of it as a great when I travel, I really, and Josh is the same. I like to buy a fragrance from wherever I'm going as sort of like a remembrance of where I'm going. However, I think the kind of scents that I like are now starting to become so readily available that it's almost difficult to find something that's special to an individual place. But I like the idea of being able to maybe go into an olfactory NYC when I'm visiting, say, Texas or Philly, and making a scent that specifically reminds me of that trip and having that scent memory for myself instead.
Yeah, I think scent is just so associative. It's such a cool part of fragrance. Something that we do a lot more of these days is like these, bridal fragrances, and wedding experiences, because people will then smell it and then get taken back to that moment. So, for obviously special occasions, for a lot of people that's a wedding day, but it could be a trip. We get people, because obviously you can name your fragrance as well. For us, so people name their scents, mostly after these, NYC 2025 or whatever, and it kind of like represents that time for them. And that's great. It's really cool for us to be part of that, obviously. But I think that, yeah, I think until you sort of have experienced that, until you've bought a fragrance somewhere where you're going, you don't realize how, like, every time you spray it after, you'll just be immediately transported back there. I've got there's a brand, DS and Doug, I'm sure you're familiar with, and they say, like, I think their slogan is like perfumers armchair travel. I love that. It's so true. It's like you smell something and it just immediately transports you if you're familiar with it, right? So like, if you've been to the sort of Middle East and you get those whiffs of those ouds and things like just saffrons, it just like really puts you in that place. And you can kind of manufacture that yourself if you do that on a journey you're taking, or a time or an occasion that you're part of.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that I think really sets Olfactory NYC apart from some of the other kind of blend your own studio kind of setups is you also offer an at-home method that allows an even greater level of accessibility. If someone's not near one of your locations, they can still kind of experience and explore that. I kudos on creating that, but also how did that idea develop? Because that's pretty complicated.
Yeah, and complexity is definitely sometimes a problem for it. But like it came about in COVID, because we at that time had one lonely store in New York at the time, and things were looking a little dire back then, in terms of, we were so young at the time. We were, a year or two old, and it was, how are we gonna continue this? How are we gonna keep this customization alive when you can't go to? And we didn't, I remember at the time, didn't know if it was ever going to happen again. So created this thing, this at home experience. And for me, I really wanted to make sure it wasn't just like a quiz, which, quizzes are getting maybe a bit better now with AI and stuff. Well, I don't know, maybe they are. But is it really, quizzes? Um, I didn't feel like the quizzes I took were really a great sort of way of representing what's actually going to smell good on me. I think that, and so I wanted to make sure that the way we did it was like through getting the scent on your skin, through smelling, through sampling. So it's kind of like it's a 3-step process, but it mimics what happens in the store, where you get a sample set of one of our of the core scents. You pick one of those, and then you don't need to send anything back. You can then get you give credits, and you can get basically just versions of that core scent in the next sample box. And you can do that a few different times and keep sort of different versions, keep playing, and then eventually, you get credit towards the final bottle, the same way, and it gets made the same way, it make in the store with your name and all that. So it's kind of like the similar way. It just takes a little longer because it's steps. But the beauty of it is that you get to live with the scent. You get to play around. You get little samples of things that were a little bit like the scent that you ended up picking, and you can maybe wear that at different times. And so you've got a built-in kind of layering fun aspect to it as well with these different samples. And then, one of those other samples, you might like that one better in another time. And so you can use, and that, and you have that. Whereas when you come to the store, you kind of like, you leave with the product there or you don't, but you don't have that same sort of those little samples. So I think that it's a different experience. It's in some ways it's not as you don't have the same interactive level as the store, but you get other things. There are other advantages instead, I guess.
Yeah, I can definitely see some of the more fragrance obsessed folks enjoying that process as well. I know I like to wear something at least twice now before I like move forward with it. So I think having those samples is definitely a great way to reach those people. So moving into this making fragrance accessible. Do you think that in some ways it risks simplifying it
In terms of the customization process, or like the fact that it's not built from scratch.
in general?
Yeah, I mean, risk simplifying it. Yeah, maybe, but I don't know if that's a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think fragrance can often it can have a tendency to overcomplicate,
Yeah.
because as you say, it's got people who just people really get into it, they love it, and it's like, nowadays, you've got these like AI systems that are like making what was sort of quite complex for people and inaccessible for people, coding, and it's making it super easy. But you end up with you can design and create things that you never would have been able to because you're not a coder. And now you're able to do it like with a couple prompts on a screen, and you're able to get to the same place and so sometimes I think like simplifying something that is complex is the outcome can be something that you never would have been able to have before. So I think for this, it's sort of a similar thing in the sense that we, fragrance, I think it's often not by any other fault, not the fault of anyone, but it's just intimidating. It's intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
You've got 300 fragrances. That's a lot for someone to think, okay, I need to buy 300 fragrances and smell these things, and it takes time to really understand fragrance. It's like, well, if you want to just kind of dip your toes in, you want to sort of, you have a little bit of interest, or we can help you, we can help you get there.
I do think there is a simplification there, but I think it's in a positive direction in that it's allowing people to experience fragrance and connect with fragrance in a different way that they might not have even thought possible before. I think it brings more people into the community because it lowers that bar for us. It lowers that bar of entry.
Yeah, and I think going back to what I said before, with you'll often have in a group of friends like that one person who's like really into fragrance, and everyone else is kind of like, maybe they're into it a little bit or whatever. But like, if you had something you really loved, then you could bring those other people into it in a way that like you knew that they would like it. But and the outcome can be whatever. Maybe they get into fragrance, maybe they don't. But at least it's like your chance to like show them a part of your world a little bit. And we get that a
Mm.
lot. Like we get people who come in and it's usually like you know it's usually like a daughter in a family of 5, and she brings in her siblings and her parents, and like the rest of them are just there just to like sort of humor her. And then, as I say, they end up really getting into it and really loving it, and and the delight and the joy of that girl that made that appointment when she sees her family really into it. It's a small thing, but I think it's just really cool.
Yeah. It's probably way less intimidating than Josh and I's approach of like meeting people and be like, hey, smell my arm. Smell this. Take my samples.
Yeah.
You said like there's the one person in a friend group. For now, multiple of my friends are afflicted with perfume, whether they like it or not. They get a wardrobe whether they initially wanted to explore it or not. Uh, but not everyone has, someone like us. So this is such a
Yeah.
good accessible point. I think another interesting thing from your perspective is what are people looking for and wanting from perfume now that they didn't 10 years ago?
Yeah, it's as you know, perfume has it's the popularity has grown incredibly. I'd love to say like we are um the beneficiaries, I think, of like a wave of interest that wasn't really there when we started. When we opened in right at the end of 2017. Um and I think obviously a lot of it's to do with what happened in COVID, people losing their sense of smell, and maybe valuing it more. I don't even know. I don't know. Do you guys have a theory on why what's been the driver behind the growth of fragrance in the past sort of 6 or 7 years?
I think it's multiple things. I think it's social media. I think it's access. I think it's a pocket of joy for a lot of people right now. I think that's why, even though, the economy is absolutely frightening at times, but people are still coming in and they're still buying fragrance because it feels like an element of control almost. I think it's for a lot of people, it feels like self-care in a different way. I also think we're seeing a much larger spike in males who are interested in fragrance. And I think it's a way for them to interact in this beauty space that maybe 10 years ago didn't feel welcoming to them as well. So I think there's multiple factors happening there.
And my perspective, I think, leans back on your reflection as well. I think COVID really broke a lot of senses of community that maybe they weren't as
Mhm.
strong as people thought they were. And now
Yeah.
people really want connection. They want connection and they want expression. And perfume as an ecosystem and a community offer both of those.
Yeah, and I think that when you can bring people together as part of a shared experience where it's not exclusionary to any one or any group. I think that's definitely what has changed. I think so. When you say what's changed with fragrance, I don't know if we started this brand 15 years ago, whether I would have been saying um, whether I would have been saying that all of our customers are coming in groups. I think that people definitely, as you say, see it as a place as a somewhere to build connection, somewhere to a, a shared experience in a way that maybe it wasn't before, and it's hard to remember like those what it's hard to remember now. But I think that that's bringing people together, having shared experiences. I think that COVID made those things so valuable. And then on top of that, you've got the fact that like it was literally that one of our senses that was attacked in that moment, and getting it back. I mean, allowed people to have maybe a new appreciation for scent and what scent is. I know a lot of people who during the COVID were buying discovery sets of fragrances to like see what scents they still, and then I think probably in doing that learned like, you know, what patchouli was. I mean, you know, just to be like, that's kind of like how these things work. So yeah, I mean, I it's been an awesome ride. It's been great to see the way people what's developed. Obviously, you know, the trends that come and go. As I said before, you know, gourmands being just the last like 5 years have just been just huge. Everyone wants more and more kind of edible things, and so what's driving that? I don't know. And now people are saying it's like GLP-1s that are driving this because you can't eat these things or you don't want to eat these things, but you want to smell them. I don't know if I buy that because the trend was happening
Yeah.
way before that, but I don't know
Yeah.
what you guys think.
I think everybody just wants to smell like a snack.
Exactly. Exactly.
So typically, as we move into kind of our closing ritual for the episodes, we talk a little bit about like what are top of mind for the company. And by all means, if there's anything you'd like to announce, please do. But I also want to take a minute to drill into like your collection as a fragrance person. What does JJ wear? What do you like?
You know, people ask me this, and it's so boring because it used to be like a lot. I used to have like a lot of cool stuff. Like I would always buy various things from all the stores around. Like I would go to Atelier Cologne and stock up, and like Labo and you know, Scent Bar when it first came up. But nowadays I'm just testing stuff all the time. I also have like a little baby at home, and when I'm wearing a lot of fragrance, she like doesn't love it. I wear fragrance a little more sparingly, and I'm you know, got all these various just testers constantly of different things that I'm trying out. So I'm not able to really and the things I wear are, yeah, mostly kind of unnamed things that we're testing out. So it's a bit of a boring answer to your question, but that's kind of where it is.
Don't worry. As she gets older, she'll definitely steal your fragrances from you.
Yeah,
I've had
exactly.
to.
Yeah. She's got a very little nose right now, so I'm saying it's that. She's got a tiny nose. I just don't think it can handle it.
My daughter is 3 now, and I've had to start hiding my PR packages because she has been swiping my bottles and putting them in her purse before I can get to review them. So
That's
it's
great.
she'll get on board eventually.
I'm excited. Yeah, no, I'm excited.
Are there any exciting things coming for Olfactory NYC that you'd like to highlight here, or kind of inform the public about where they can reach you?
Yeah, I mean, so you know, for us, you know, something we've done recently, and it's a little bit kind of along the lines of what we were speaking about earlier about appealing to a customer that is a little bit more, you know, fragrance obsessive, a frag head. Although I hate that word, but you know, that like you know, we've recently been doing these sort of intense, so you can like kind of juice your scent effectively and make it more like a sort of parfum concentration, whereas before we were doing all sort of EDPs. And so that's a cool thing to do because you can now do that. Like, you know, if you like a scent, but you wear it in the store and you're like, you know, worried that you're someone who wants something, typically wants things stronger, or you know, want things to last a really long time. Like you can do that to any of the customization. You can do that to any customized scent, you know, at the end of the process, or later on. Like if you buy the scent, you're like, I love it, but I feel like it's not wearing it like long enough on me. You know, you can be, you know, you can get that too. So I think that's sort of, I think, a cool thing we've done recently, that allows people to kind of take that extra step that they weren't able to before. On the personalization side, we recently allow you to also engrave your bottle if you're someone who's interested in that kind of thing. So that's so just different ways, and we're always looking for different ways to kind of make the experience, make the product, you know, better in any way that we can, and sort of elevate the experience in different ways. And so it's just sort of parts of that.
When somebody leaves Olfactory NYC, or when somebody completes their online at home kit, what do you hope lingers for them?
I hope that I hope they remember the experience, even in the at-home experience. What we learned so much about the at-home experience is that we thought that was like people doing it alone because it's really for one person. everyone is doing it in groups as well. Like even at home, with this thing that's designed for one person, where you can only get one, it only comes with one fragrance. People are still doing it with each other, and they're like having these moments of experience with each other. And this time, it's like out of our view, and we don't, we're not a part of it in the same way. Although we're doing new things to be a part of. That's actually another new thing we're doing, is where you can now do the second part virtually with an associate, so you can kind of like do that from home as well. But yeah, I mean, I think it's those moments together. It's those moments of connection. It's remembering the experience. It's hopefully every time you smell, you remember that experience, but also you wear it and you're, getting compliments. That's the best thing, right? Like the amount of people we get reviews say like, I wear this every day and I get so many compliments. Like that's what you wear fragrance for. A lot of people wear fragrance because they want people to say, you smell amazing. And every time we do that, we're really pumped about it.
JJ, can you let the people know where they can find Olfactory NYC?
Well, you can find Olfactory NYC in New York, Boston, DC, Dallas, Atlanta, Philadelphia, and Miami right now. Coming soon to Chicago, and also online at olfactorynyc.com. And send us a note at hello@olfactorynyc.com. If you say JJ in it, it'll come straight to me. So if you want to ask me anything, you can also just address it to JJ, and they'll forward it my way.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Go ahead,
Thanks
Greg.
so much. It's been so fun.
Yes, thank you, everyone. I look forward to stopping by. I'm pretty close to Chicago, so that might be the location I get to. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider liking, subscribing, commenting. It helps us reach new audiences. Thank you, and we will see you next time.
Okay, love you. Bye.